For the founders in the space with style and grace, I'm Brittany Antoinette, host of the Not So CEO talk show and founder of The Idea Girl. From work and wellness to bootstrapping and burnout, we cover all bases on building a brand, whether you're a seasoned vet or you're just getting started. Through guest interviews, water cooler combos, and office hours, we're paving way for a new era of Not So CEOs. So grab your notepad and tune in for unfiltered banter on branding, business, and bullshit. Tricia Lee is a proud Brooklyn resident with immense knowledge and appreciation of the borough's history and the revitalization of its neighborhoods. Tricia's firsthand knowledge of the Brooklyn market stems not only from being a longtime resident of the borough, but also from owning and operating her very popular chain of nail and beauty bars, Polish Bar Brooklyn, for over 10 years in Fort Greene, Clinton Hill, and Prospect Heights. As a well-known business owner and active member of the business community, she has served on the various merchants associations. She makes the direct connection between commercial development and residential trends in Brooklyn. Tricia Lee collaborates frequently with area business leaders and building owners. Her level of commitment and love for the community has contributed to her becoming the go-to resource for clients, friends, and business contacts when it comes to neighborhood knowledge and real estate. Tricia's sharp business acumen, tireless work ethic, and tech savvy sets her apart. All of these skills have proved vital in the growth of her real estate business. Her insight from personally owning real estate, being a landlord and tenant, enable her to successfully meet her clients' goals. Tricia Lee hit record-breaking first-year sales upon entering the real estate industry and has sold over $300 million in property. Professional, organized, and dedicated, she works to create a positive experience for both sides in every property transaction. In 2020, Brooklyn Reader voted Tricia Lee top 5 Black real estate brokers in Brooklyn. In 2021, Tricia Lee was recruited by Ryan Serhant as he set to launch Serhant. Joining forces with our partner Jeff St. Aromant, Team Tricia Lee was formed. Together, they have led this micro team to set townhouse sale records in Fort Greene, Bedford-Stuyvesant, Brooklyn Heights, and Flatbush. In addition to her love of all things real estate, interiors, and small business, she is an active member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, a founding member of the Myrtle Avenue Merchants Association, sits on the board of advisors for Clinton Hill v. Elms, and attends church in downtown Brooklyn. She is a wellness enthusiast, lover of travel, cooking, hosting, and all things beauty. In her spare time, you will find her reviewing beauty products and services or trying her hand at the latest DIY home trend. Tricia Lee shares most of her real estate journey as a cast member on the newest Netflix series, Owning Manhattan, premiering June 28th. Tricia, thank you so much for being a guest today on the Not So CEO talk show. I am so excited to link up with you and talk about your journey, talk about your pivot, your transition into being one of the most successful real estate agents in this country. I mean, hello. And not only that, I would also I mean, come on, a lot of us are finally at that point in time in our lives where we might be thinking about buying a house or it's crossed our mind and trying to figure out, should we be renting? Should we be selling? So I'm really excited to just learn more about you and ultimately just for our listeners to learn more about you and your beautiful journey from going from beauty to brokerage. So how are you
Yeah,
doing today, Tricia?
I'm good. I'm good. This is an exciting week. This is an exciting day. So I'm doing really well. I mean, I'm on fumes as far as sleep, but the energy and like my mind is strong.
Does the excitement and the passion is what kind of like keeps you alive ultimately? Like, you know what? I only got 2 hours of sleep, but I'm so pumped about this that
I
it
know.
doesn't even feel like 2 hours. Is that
Yeah,
what the energy
I
is?
mean, I think it's closer to 4 if that even matters. This is a,
Same.
but this is a good week. Like our show comes out Friday. We're doing a lot of promotion around the show, and it's just a celebratory moment because in addition to working in the real estate business full time, I've been working on this project full time. So it's almost like I get to like, set something off into the water and let it sail, which is exciting. And then also I get to see what this thing is that I've been a part of for so long. So it's a good week. It's like a really great release week. I mean, yeah, we're releasing the show, but it's also like, you know, finally.
Like taking a deep breath.
Yeah.
But for our listeners, for those who don't know, Tricia is actually starring in a Netflix series, and I would love for you to actually talk about that before we even get into any other questions because hello, this is Major and congratulations.
Oh, thank you.
Please share more so we can watch you.
Yeah, sure. So my real estate brokerage based in New York and 10 other cities around the country, we have created the very first Netflix branded uh New York City real estate show. And that comes out Friday the 28th, June 28th, and it'll be the whole series releases on Netflix on Friday morning, which is great because you can kind of just like get it all in and watch the whole thing. You don't have to ask any questions. You get to just like binge away. But it follows the stories and the days, kind of a documentary style way of how we work, where we work, what we do, who we work with, and the relationships in the brokerage. And I'm really excited about it because it really covers my journey of wanting to just tackle different, objectives in my career and in the real estate industry. So it'll show a little bit of that. It'll show a little bit about like what we do, what we're known for at Serhant. We are a media-based firm, and that shows through like and stands out and above all of the other brokerages. And so it's going to be an interesting week for us to see the response to like, this thing that we put out there for everyone to enjoy and to experience. So I'm excited.
That is amazing. And can you just tell us really quickly the name of the show so that way we can stay tuned in?
Yes, it's Owning Manhattan. It's at Owning Manhattan on socials. And it is a World of Wonder Productions, a Netflix series. It launches this week with 8 episodes, 8 45-minute episodes. And that's where I'll be on Friday morning.
Amazing. So, listeners, community, not so CEOs out there, we need to pay attention, make sure that we are tuned in and that we are watching
Owning
Tricia on
Manhattan.
Owning Manhattan this upcoming Friday, June 28th. We are tuned
Yeah.
in on Netflix. All right.
Yeah.
Period.
Watch
So
it, binge it, watch it separately. I want no binge parties. I want you watching it on your Netflix account.
we can't
Numbers.
we can't binge it.
No, no, you can binge it, but you can't have binge watch parties. You absolutely can binge it, but numbers matter. So when we put our stories out there, the best way we can support our stories is to make sure we're all sitting individually in our Netflix accounts watching those stories, not 700 of us getting together and watching one account. So I want to specify no binge watch parties. I want you watching the episode and then you can go to a binge watch party.
I hear that. We are going to make sure that we
You
are
have to ask for
tuning
what you
in.
want.
I know that's right. Closed mouths do not get fed. I know that's right. But before you ended up on Owning Manhattan on Netflix, which is huge, which is major, I want to take it back. I want to take it way, 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 way back. And I want to start from the beginning. What was life like for you growing up from childhood to college years?
hmm Well, I think that part of my life, I would say most people would say I'm the very same person now. I think if you've known me my whole life, which a lot of people have, they would say she's always like who she is today is who she was at like 5 years old or 7 years old. So I was very much a leader, very much into having a say in everything that I was involved in. Definitely the girl that like was the head of the dance and the head cheerleader and like the president of the class, you name it, like vice president of the class, whatever it was. I always wanted to have a say in things. Very involved in student government. Very vocal about what I like, what I don't like, what I'm into, what I'm not into, and very like goal oriented. Like I just remember making lists about things I wanted to accomplish as long as I can remember writing, I remember doing that on a daily basis. And I still do it now. I mean, like my list is right here. So I think my younger years, I'm very much a version of that now. I do think that my environment was one that was very unique in the sense that I was in a very limited minority environment. I grew up in Arizona, so it was a very small percentage of people that looked like me, and um,
Oh, wow.
that made for a unique
Where were you born originally?
I was born here in New York, but I was raised in Arizona. So I was there from the time I was 5 years old, and I was there, until I left college. And I just never remember not feeling like a very small 1 or 2% of the room, specifically Arizona State, where we had like 50,000 students and 700 Black students.
Wow.
That was my experience. If you want to call it growing up, I feel like New York really raised me, but that was definitely my formative years. And I think I even understood then, as much as I understand it now, that taught me to be comfortable in uncomfortable rooms and spaces, because it's all I ever really knew. So I just had to find comfort in another way, because no one looked like me. No one probably lived like me. It was just a very different environment. So as I've grown in my life, that was never an issue for me. Like it's an issue because it's sad, but it's like I'm accustomed to that challenge. And so all I can do is really just be who I am fully in any room, because I never had a choice of having people around me that would make me feel more comfortable, you know?
That's beautiful. And if anything, that just reveals that you have a superpower, which some people might look at as a disadvantage. You found power in that. So that way, no matter what, no matter where you are, you can be your full, true, authentic self and move through any room. We have a lot of full blown grown adults who can't even do that. So the fact that you discovered that superpower from living in the town that you did, where, I mean, I can't imagine going to such a large college and there's 5,000 students and only 700 of us are Black.
Yeah,
That's
like
5,000 students.
hours before you'd see someone else that looked like you,
That is
High school,
crazy.
grade school, very similar. I remember our school got a magnet program in high school, like halfway through my high school years. So that was nice because we had so many minority students come into the school, but not in grade school. And it just was what it was, it just became what it was. And so I couldn't let that stop me from pursuing the things I wanted to do. So like, yeah, I'm a Black girl and I want to be the president of the class. And I don't care if there's any other Black girls in the class. I want to be the president of the class. And that's just what life was. And I kind of like what life still is, honestly.
I love that for you. I love that energy. By any chance, what is your zodiac sign?
It's Pisces. I know nothing about this stuff, but it's Pisces, but I'm the first day of Pisces and I'm on the cusp. And so I'm super duper Aquarius, everyone says, but I definitely have the emotional side of a Pisces, but I'm 8 hours into Pisces. So my birthday's the first day of Pisces. So
Got it. So your
yeah,
birthday is like February
the 20th.
20,
Mm-hmm.
20th. Okay,
Yeah,
February
morning
20th.
in the morning. So everyone's like, no, you're on the cusp. That's not. And I'm like, okay, whatever. Like, what I do know is everyone says the same thing about my personality.
It's so interesting because I would definitely say it's my mom, she like studies astrology. And what I've noticed is that a
Oh,
lot of our signs of what we are, our other placements and other planets, it we are our sun sign to an extent. The other placements that we have also impact the way we show up in the world. So, for
mm,
example, I'm a Cancer, I'm another water sign, but I have a lot of Leo placements, a lot of fire energy, which allows me to get things done in a very bold, vivacious, and passionate way. So it's like for me, if I want to do something, I need it done now. I'm not
yeah,
going to
yeah,
talk
yeah.
about it. I'm one of those people, I'm gonna be about it. Like if I tell you I want to do this, you're gonna see me do it 3 months later.
Love
But
it.
there's no if, ands, and buts about it. But I was gonna say what's interesting for you is that you're literally Pisces is in the middle of, which is so interesting, of Aries and Aquarius. So I would not be surprised if you had those placements in your chart because Aquariuses are like, listen, I don't care who likes me. I am gonna put myself out there. And they also have just like energy for just a lot of passion around community and humanitarianism versus Aries are like leaders. They're the first to do everything. They don't care how it's going to get done. They're going to do it.
Oh, wow.
And so I can definitely see how, because I was talking to
Yeah,
you, I was
you
like,
summed me up in like
whoa,
32 seconds just there.
literally leader. It's giving leader energy. So now that we're talking about leading, what exactly led you to come back to New York City and what did you do when you got here?
So I was like, there's one of these girls that like loved beauty. Like I noticed your makeup because I noticed everyone's makeup. I noticed
Yes.
everyone's eyebrows. Like I just love beauty. So I was working in a beauty in college, just as my college job, like working at the makeup counter. And at that time, I just wanted to work for MAC Cosmetics. Like that was a huge thing, and that's what I wanted to do. So I didn't really know where I was going to go to next, but I knew that that was something that I wanted to conquer. And I felt like that could lead me into my next, experience. And I always saw myself being on TV, strangely. Definitely more like on a like Jackie Reed energy, like doing BET Nightly News kind of thing. But I definitely felt like that's what I would love to do. But I loved beauty. I loved makeup, loved skincare. And so I worked in beauty and I was like, I want to move to New York and work for Mac. Because if I worked for Mac in New York, like that's the best market. I'll learn everything and I'll learn it really quickly. And then I'll just come back to Arizona and set up my life. And then I moved to New York and I fell in love with New York and I fell in love and I just like that was it. Like it was this is my home now. So I started working at Mac when I very first moved here and worked there for a long time and loved it.
How
But
long did you work there?
I was there for over 9 years,
And
like
you
almost
were
9 years. I
were
think
you
nine
a
years.
makeup artist or did you like switch roles
I started
eventually?
as a makeup artist, but not very long, like because I loved makeup. It wasn't what I was best at. I was definitely had more of a business brain. Like I really wanted to understand how they made money and how they could
Mm.
profit. I just really, I don't know, for whatever reason, I leaned into that more. I think I always say it's because I struggled with math as a child, because as an adult, I do not.
I know that's right.
But I did work for Mac and not very long as an artist. Definitely got more into like retail management at the time and into operations at the time. Setting up stores and interviewing and really like organizing the teams that would represent the brand in different areas. So for a long time, I was just like helping with opening stores, going all around New York at a huge time of expansion and helping them to open in different doors all over New York. And at that time, I had already been kind of thinking about and planning my small business polish bar that I wanted to open. And it was something I did on my lunch and I did it after work. And me and my coworkers talked about it like it was a real business. It was just something that existed in our minds and it was real. It's like, this is what Tricia's going to do. So when I finally took the leap to do that, it was just like, not so much like I'm just going to jump and do it, but it's like I put a plan in action and I just followed the plan. So I had gotten myself to a financial place where I could do it. I had gotten myself to where I had the funds to do it, the reserves to see if it would work or not. And whatever that other piece of just knowing you can do something is, I think that that's just there. That's just who I am. So I did it and I did it well, and it was something I had to learn the job while I was doing the job. But I knew how I wanted to do it and I knew I wanted to do it in a way that was fitting to who I am and what I appreciate. And I feel like if you lead with that, you're always going to be okay, at least
Mhm.
with your tribe. That's how I feel about it. So I created a business that I could appreciate. And it was very different at the time. Like a lot of what you all experience now in the city and in a lot of major cities for nail salons and nail bars, it was very new for when I did it. No one was doing it that way. It was very upscale. It was very like focused on natural products. It was also an ambiance conversation. It was an experience. It was nostalgic. Everything from the music to the polish to the branding was very intentional. And at that time, a lot of small businesses just did not put that foot forward. I don't know that you can survive now in that way. But like when my business opened, everyone's like, oh, is this a chain? Because that's how it presented. And so that was my way, and that wasn't the way. But it worked. And it worked really, really well. And over the course of the 10 years, it set the way and it set the trend and it set the style. And so I sat back and kind of observed that they went from talking shit about it to loving it.
Mm.
And now it's the standard. And so now if you're not doing at least what Polish Bar is doing, you're not doing enough. But, in the beginning, it was like, why y'all trying to do so much? Literally, people would come into the store and be like, why you got all this going on? Like, why are your prices this? Like, why you got all these names and what are all these product? Like people were literally upset that we had like a brown sugar pedicure. This
I
was just
love
different.
that.
This was a time in New York where your mani-pedi was $10 and I mean, your polish was 50 cents. Like that's what it was. And so here we are coming into Clinton Hill and we're like, no, it's going to be an experience, like you're going to bring your girls here. You want to have some mimosas on a Saturday morning. It's going to be a whole moment. And it was great. And it was 10 years and it was everything I did every day for 10 years. And then maybe around 7 years in, I was like, I can't keep this up anymore. I had two locations and I just was like, I just couldn't do any.
Wow. It was two locations because I remember Polish Bar from back in the
Mm,
day. I was definitely a little younger, so I was probably
right.
like in high school during this time, so I couldn't afford the
Really?
pedicure.
Ah,
But when but I remember at one point in time where it was like if you wanted like a luxury salon experience, you went to Dashing Diva.
yeah,
And
yeah,
to
yeah.
have Polish Bar come up, right? And I'm gonna just say it
Hmm.
like this. Hot gal is that trend. That's all I'm gonna say.
Yes.
That's literally
Yes,
what you did,
yes, yes.
right?
Say it again.
Um,
Yes, yes.
so I
I'm gonna get
feel
a t-shirt that says that. I hope you don't get mad.
no, hot gal is that trend. I definitely feel like that's exactly what you did because the way you were able to essentially build a brand, right? That's what you did differently. And most of all, I feel like what you did, what really set you apart, what your unique value proposition was, is you were able to give people in this community, and especially Black women, didn't matter exactly, color of your face or your race, but you were able to give us an experience that we couldn't get unless we were to take two trains or a train into Manhattan,
Yeah,
and you were able to bring that to a place like Brooklyn before gentrification went rampant. So it
right,
was like, wow, I'm this Black woman. I can get a pedicure and feel like a queen when I walk in and walk out because let's be real. Consumers buy and purchase based on how they want something to make them feel. So
feel
somebody will spend 60, $80 on a pedicure if it makes them feel amazing and
right,
beautiful. So you
right,
were able to do that. But as you were talking, as you were mentioning, you got to year 7 and year 7 was like blah. You started off with this passion. This was your baby, and you dove into this head first. But by
right,
year 7, you were like, ooh, what's going on? So we already know for a fact that every entrepreneurial journey has its ups and downs.
right.
What were some of the biggest challenges you faced when starting and running Polish Bar, and how did you eventually overcome them?
So a lot of my challenges were um I did not do the service. So I was very much like someone who could run a business, I could run a team of people, I could manage training and development and had a plan for everyone that I worked with, like if you know how to do these two things, like let's make it so in 6 months you know how to do seven more things. So I could manage that. But what I never knew how to do were the actual services. And no one understood that. They thought that I was just like in the salon, like providing all these services. And it's like, no, I was doing what you all saw. I was developing the brand. I was creating the feeling that you had around this service and this experience. And that was my job. And my job was to do that and do it well and promote it to death. Right. So I did that. And I think that once I had two locations, that weight was so much for me. And you want to talk about not so CEO? I was like, I want to quit this job. Excuse me, where do you quit?
Like, can I fire myself?
I always say, I'm like, don't play with me. I quit my own company, so don't ever play with
Don't
me.
play with her. She will give you a 10 days note. She was gonna email herself a 10-day notice, a 2-week notice. Like, I'm out, girl.
I gave my job at Mac a 30-day notice. I gave my business 14 days notice. Don't play with her.
Wow. Oh
Hi,
my
we're closing in
goodness.
14 days because I have a new gig. And if you want to join me over here, check this link. Like that was very much what it is. And they joined and they checked the link and here they came. And they're like, okay, you don't do pedicures anymore. What do you do now? I'm like, I sell houses. Okay, you want to sell my house? Sure do.
So now we got to get into that because once you realize that you are falling out of love with your business
Hmm.
and you realize, okay, I'm not doing the services, you also recognize that you had some major strengths here. And I think that was apparent just from your career at Mac. You were running teams of people. You had a lot of leadership and
Yes,
operational skills that showed that you pretty much can build anything that you
right.
want. And that is reflective of your efforts. So at some point, when you realized that you were falling out of love with that business,
Hmm.
what led to that feeling essentially? And how did you know it was time to go?
So I always wanted to have Polish Bar be a gateway to doing a beauty brand of some kind or a beauty product of some kind. That was the intention there. It may
Hmm.
still very much well be the intention. I got into real estate because at the time we were going through like we were still very much in the recession, even though it had been very many years. And the recession was just hitting my industry. Like I
So
was
this
starting
was
to,
like back in '08, maybe.
this was like the recession definitely '08. I would say I didn't feel it in my business until 2010 because it hit
Mm,
different industries at different times. And so I
yes.
started to feel it when a lot of my everyday clients were getting laid off of work. And specifically, like I had a lot of clients that worked in education. Like in Clinton Hill, there's like 3 colleges there. Like there's just, it's a very heavy education-based community. Lots of professors live in the neighborhood. Lots of teachers live in the neighborhood.
Yeah.
They have great charter schools. I had a very heavy client body of teachers, brokers, you name it. It started to really hit my clients. I mean, at one point, I remember having this card and being like, "Oh, what credit card is this?" And they're like, "That's the unemployment credit card." I was like, "I see
I didn't
everybody."
even know they made an unemployment credit card. I haven't done
Yeah, it's like a
unemployment in so
debit card.
long.
And I just thought it was a new card. And I was asking about it one day and like, "Oh, that's the unemployment debit card. Like people can use it like cash." And I was just like, "People are using their unemployment benefits to come here. This is crazy." And you saw it and then you saw them less.
Wow.
So it's like, okay, you're not every Thursday. Now you're once every 6 weeks, understandably. But I saw it impacting my business. And then that was like in the middle of the recession where things in real estate, although it was the cause of the recession, things were bouncing back in real estate first. And at this time, so we're talking like 2011, 2012, like deep into the recession, but real estate was making a rebound. And I noticed the rebound. And I felt like it was, well, you caused the problem and you getting better faster than everybody else.
Mm.
Like I had friends that went from borderline bankruptcy to really like starting to develop again within 3 years. And I didn't feel like anyone else was recovering from the recession that quickly. So that's what brought my attention to real estate. And then I had done a little leasing in college for like no time, but loved it and really thought I was good at it. Well, I think I was good at it because I was very successful at it. I think I do well with sales in general, though.
Mm.
So, I was like, well, let me try to do this. And at the time, like one of my really, really, really good friends was heavy into real estate. She was a very young, successful developer. Something that you just don't see every day, like a Black woman that's just developing buildings and ripping down this and putting up 8 apartments or whatever. And so that's my influence, right? But I'm running a beauty business. But the person I sit down to lunch with and get pedicures with and hang out with all the time and barbecue with she's building residences. And so maybe it wasn't that unachievable to me because I was seeing it done every day by someone that could really relate to and was very close to. But every day she was just like, you need to be in real estate. Like, you need to be in real estate. Like, I know you think beauty is the thing for you, but girl, like, you would run circles around these folks if you come and join this game. Like,
Mm.
no, I'm the beauty girl. Look at me. I'm the beauty girl. Like, don't
She's
nobody
like, I
real
don't sell.
celebrity
She's like, I
like
don't sell
this.
houses. I sell looks.
I sell books all day. And at 2015, I was just like, you know what? Let me just try. I feel like I'd be good at it. Let me just try. And I was like, you know what? I'll do it, and it'll definitely lead me back to beauty. And then it didn't at the time because I really liked it. I really, really liked it. And it pulled a little competitive energy out of me that I hadn't really had a chance to develop at the time. So it was like, me against me. Like, can this month be better than last month? Or, my first year, I was just busy and just head down working really, really hard. But, maybe 7 or 8 months maybe 8 months into the year, my sales director came to me and said, listen, like, unless we hire a developer in the next few months, you're on track to be like the rookie of the year. And like the most sales that we've seen in a first year agent in like, I don't even think it was like 7 years or something like that. And he's like, you're really killing it. Like, I just want you to know. And I had like maybe 3 or 4 months before the year was going to be up. And then, you were going to be like awarded this rookie of the year thing. And so I was like, oh, I'm really good at this. Like that. Okay, got it. Like you don't have anything to gauge it because you're just doing your own thing. You work for yourself when you're in real estate. You kind of
Mhm.
plug into this brokerage, but you plug into them in the sense that they provide services to you and work for you essentially, really, but you're very much working for yourself, killing and eating only what you've killed. So that probably was the best news I could have gotten at the time because I was kind of like not sure how well I was doing. I felt that I was doing well, but it was nice to have someone that had been in the business for like 20 years say like, hey, this is your thing. And it just lit a fire under me. So I did get Rookie of the Year. I was immediately recruited to Compass before I even had a chance to get my award. So Compass brought me in. They made me their rookie of the year because the numbers were still rookie of the year numbers, even at their brokerage. And that just kind of set the path off for my career. And it maybe helped me to come into the business a little bit louder than most. Um, and then I'm in the business and I'm doing things my way. And I understand what we do here and how people do it. And then I'm doing it my way still. And again, met with a lot of criticism, definitely had people emailing me like, well, are you a broker or are you a beauty girl? Because this newsletter is very confusing. And I'm like, I'm both.
Like, I'm gonna do both again because hot gal is that trend. For one, your skills are super transferable.
Right.
And to be able to, because you, as you mentioned, in real estate, you have to be your own boss. You don't have anyone that's checking you. You don't have anyone that's telling you you have to make this much. It's all on you
Yeah.
because, as you said, you eat only what you kill. But
Right.
it's evident that those same skills from Polish Bar and from Mac followed you into your career into real estate. But of course, because we all know that falling out of love with your business is really tough. How did you manage or balance that transition going from Polish Bar into going into real estate? And what steps did you take to transition from beauty to brokerage?
Well, I think the first part is like I really dive deep into learning in the beginning because I'm better when I'm really good at things.
Mm,
I feel better when I'm really good at things. So I wanted to be good and I wanted to learn a lot. So I just followed a lot of what I was being taught at the time, which was to dedicate a certain amount of time every day to learning, to
right.
studying the market, to knowing what's going on. To understand, how the market is shifting, like how interest rates impact that. So I did a lot. I worked really, really hard in the beginning, and I can't emphasize that enough because I do think that we tend to lie about the truth and how hard it really is to establish yourself in real estate. Like you are going to be the person that would essentially be in charge of trading a client's oftentimes biggest asset. So there's very few jobs where you have that level of responsibility, besides being a doctor where you're actually like saving organs, lives, you know, people kind of right after they help, they put their money, you know? And so you're not just selling houses, you're being trusted with someone's asset, you're being trusted with someone's retirement more times than not, regardless of the market you're in. Um, so it is a lot of pressure, it's a lot of responsibility, and it's a lot that's asked of you. Our jobs are nothing like what they seem. They really are. It's like we just get such a bad rap because in order to be good at this business, like I mean, let's say you had nepotism working in your favor. Let's say you were married to the right person. Let's say I don't know, you used to work in constructions. Like, even if you're given a head start in real estate, it's a hard ass business to be successful in, even
Especially
with a
in New
head start,
York.
especially in New York. Like, let's not layer in being a Black woman onto that, but let's just say across the board, you could be set up with the best head start. It is still a very hard business to be successful in. So, even people that are born into the right situation. I'm like, if you're maintaining this business, you're working your ass off. I know it and you know it. It doesn't
Mm.
appear that way, but it's very hard because of the level of responsibility and the burden of the weight of what it is that we're dealing with, the actual product. People's homes, more times than not, their biggest asset.
It is
Definitely
the biggest asset. It's
for
probably
most
the most
people.
expensive thing.
For most people, yeah. And so you're to be trusted with that. And you're under the impression our jobs are easy? No. So I dived deep into being sure that I could feel confident. And the only way to get there was to really learn and understand the job comfortably.
Mm.
And the transition for me probably in some ways was harder because I was running my beauty business at the same time. And so it was a lot on my plate, but it was also easier because I didn't have the growing pains of a lot of first year agents. Like I was already used to being self-directed, self-motivated, able to prioritize my time, knowing what's important, knowing the importance of branding and marketing, right? And knowing the importance of creating a feeling when you're associating with my brand.
Mm.
So a lot of those things that I think a lot of agents can't really grasp because they just can't figure that out. They need to figure that out. They need to learn about that. That just came with me. So I kind of came and you had to just do that stuff already. So I had to learn the job. I didn't need to learn the role. Like I was
Right.
already the boss. I was already the head. I was already the person that made all decisions and decided about everything from the aesthetic to the experience to the tone to the feeling of my brand. And that helped me a lot. So I always say that's my head start in the sense that a lot of people don't have that. I got that.
Wow. How long were you running at least at the same time simultaneously? How long were you running
A
or
year.
wow, so you gave it a year
I
before
was
you
doing
said,
both
I'm
for
out.
a year. Yeah. And I knew that real estate was the new conversation, but had to do both for a year because closing businesses is also a lot of work, and it took a lot of time. And I had to do that, but then I also was learning my new job. And when you start in real estate, if you're very, very lucky, you make money in the first 6 months. A lot of people don't. So I wasn't making any money either in the second part of my day. So I had to do everything, and it required really just like 6.5 days a week of work. And I just said, if you can just put your head down and do this and knock this out, you can blow it out the water. And it's really what I did. I kind of just like, I call it getting low, where I just kind of like get self-focused, and I'm not as available, and I'm not really strong in communication because I'm focused on me. And that was one of those times where I just had to do that. But I knew if I just put my head down and focus, miss some things, you know what I mean? You can miss a couple things. You can be MIA for a little bit.
Like you can skip
Just
that brunch.
you can skip a couple of brunches, you can miss a couple of events because you're working on something greater. And that was where my head was at. And I did that for probably 11 months, I would say. Um, but when that was done, it was like, bam, like I had phenomenal business under my belt, more business coming in, a whole new brand to really curate and to really work on. And it was exciting because it was new, so I was excited about that. So I was busy, but I loved it. And then that just set a path forward. And I think early in real estate, the conversation came up like, oh, your personality is X. Like, you belong on TV with this. Like, that was an early conversation. I would say by my second year, I started hearing that. Never paid any attention to it because I was just like, I don't even know what that looks like. Let me just like do my job and make my money.
Wow, they were literally seeing that for you before
Oh,
and it was just like I'm just being myself. Like I'm
but I
doing
was
nothing but
like
being
3 months
myself.
in, and people are like, you need to be on TV. I'm like, I don't even know how to spell contract. What are you talking about?
I love the fact that they seen the star quality in you almost immediately. That means that you were born to do this, where most people, such a transition or such a pivot can just be daunting, especially of like having to kind of start all over again. But your enthusiasm is ultimately what kept your dream alive in order for you to arrive to where you are now. Can you speak to the importance of not being afraid to start over when one dream has expired and how you found the courage to do so?
The courage. That's a great tone. Yeah, it is a lot of courage. I think you figure out, the courage. Like, I think that in your heart, you're like, well, for me, I'm like, I know I can do this. Like, if I set my mind to anything, I can do it. I understand that. But the bumps along the way are kind of always dissuading you from thinking that you can actually pull it off. And I think that in those moments, that's when you have to really lean on your tribe, because sometimes, like I always say this, when I forget who I am, my girls don't. They remind me. My
Mm.
family doesn't, you know what I mean? And then I'm like, I'm human. I'm like anyone else. Like, you're gonna have days where you're gonna be your most confident. You're gonna have other days where like, I don't really think that this is working. Like, I think it's just me here,
Right.
But at that point, I had moved to New York. I'd conquered that. I'd worked at Mac. I'd conquered that. I'd had 11 promotions in 9 years. I'd
Wow.
opened a business, and I'd opened another business, and I couldn't go anywhere that people didn't know that business. I could not walk into a room where people didn't know that business. So in a lot of ways, I did that shit too. Like, I really did that. I walk into
That
a room
you
now
did.
for like, hi, Polish Bar. I'm like, I do have a first name. It's
Not
fine.
not calling you Polish.
Absolutely. And you answer to it. You're not silly. You're like, hey, girl.
Wow, that is just so beautiful because essentially you're just branded with excellence. Since then, you've managed to successfully dive headfirst because you dove headfirst into a completely different industry. And you've sold over $300 million in New York City real estate, and you're currently one of the top brokers in the industry. What advice or strategies do you have for anyone that is looking to take the leap and pivot careers?
Oh, so much. But I think the most important thing is to study the craft. Really study the craft and make sure it's interesting to you. Not the results, not the accolades, not the outcome, but study the craft, like the day-to-day craft. Like I spend countless hours in my car. I spend countless hours meeting with people that I don't know, interviewing essentially. Like, interviewing, pitching. Like if I want to work with Brittany, I've got to pitch you to let you know I'm the person that you should choose to work with you on this sale. So I'm auditioning on a regular basis. I'm auditioning my properties on a daily basis. Like, Brittany, you want a home? Okay, what about this home? Let me show you this. You want to come in the backyard? Like, so I'm trying out all the time. And I have to do that with the confidence of knowing that you could totally like it or you could totally hate it. But I've still got to do my performance and I've got to put the best into it that I possibly can. Is that something that you feel comfortable doing? Because some people like want to get into the business and they're like, I don't like tryouts. I don't like auditions. Okay, well, our job is to really audition. Our
Mm.
job is to really put together these amazing proposals to get people to even call us in for an audition. So how do you feel about putting together data, putting together outcome, discussing? Some people could maybe sell $300 million of real estate, but don't feel comfortable talking about it or sharing it. Like, are you comfortable with promoting yourself? So I think it's important to really study the craft. And the craft of selling homes is understanding the structures that you're selling, the negotiation tactics of successfully doing it, the collaboration that needs to happen with other agents, because you're on one side, there's a whole other side. How well do you work with groups of people is important.
Hmm.
Um, and then authoritative, like I think one of the key things about the way I manage my business is I always am in charge and I'm uncomfortable with that. I don't try to make it like less than that or more than that. I'm in charge. Now, if I bring people in that know far more than me to handle things, by all means, that's what it is. But I'm comfortable being in charge and I'm comfortable leading, and that gets really, really convenient in a situation where you've got three lawyers at odds, two clients at odds, um, a building management company at odds. This is New York. There's a lot of history and a lot of things that go into trading real estate here. Um, can you step into that six-person equation and get what you want out of the situation for you and your client? Like, do you even have that personality, that capability? And not to say you have to have my personality to do it, because I see people do it super successfully that are nothing like me. They don't deliver like me, that were complete opposites, just as effective and far more effective. Do you have a way to be effective is the question. So I think people need to really study what we do and not what they see about what we do. Because I think in this time you tend to see, oh, just close this, just close that, and celebratory, and look at my new car, da 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 da. Those are all the results. Like, do you have interest in the actual work itself? The actual work itself is very much auditioning on a regular basis, pitching properties, putting together data that supports your capability to do a job better than the other people that are the best at doing it as well. Because I'm never sitting down against another agent that's not as strong as me. So you meet with
Mm.
me at 10 o'clock, the 12 o'clock is just as strong as I am.
Do you feel like that's applicable to any industry that someone's trying to pivot into? Say, for example, I am a brand designer and I decided that, you know what, I want to become a software engineer. Would you say those same exact methods would apply even for that industry?
Yeah, I always say study the craft, because if you don't, like I used to say when I had my business, like, oh, people would come to me and they say they want to do exactly what I'm doing. I said, do you want to sit in a salon all day? Like, do you want to stand in a salon all day? Do you want to stand in a salon till 3 o'clock and then get in your car and drive to your second salon from
It's like
three
you
to
have to love it. It's like you really have
yeah.
to love what you do.
Do you want to talk to women about their nail polish color all day? Is that what you want to do? Like, do you want to sit around and look at five different beiges and figure out which one women that walk into your business will resonate with more, because you can only get three colors, but they're all beige? Like, is that of interest to you? I could stare at nail polishes all day. All day long, I could talk about beauty
All
products.
day
You know what I
long.
mean? So, but maybe that's not your personality. So maybe you don't want to do what it is that I do. Like, I could walk houses all day long. I never ever get tired of it. I could drive around, look at properties all day long. I never get tired of it. Sometimes I lose my way because I'm lost off looking at properties. Like, you have to love the craft. So I always say study the craft, because anyone, I think, can figure out the rest. And the
Hmm.
rest is, how are you going to package it in your own unique style? How are you going to set yourself apart from the other 19 of them? I think people can figure that out. If they can't, they can train their way through that, I think.
Right, right.
But
And
you need to find something that you genuinely have an interest in. Like, I leave a property and come home and like I'm looking up the sink, I'm looking up the faucet, I'm looking up the tile. I'm like, I think I saw that in my little book. Like it's my interests. It's what I
Mhm.
like. It's what I'm interested in. And I think that that's important because that is what I do.
That
I
that
don't
is so
go to
important.
closings every day. I don't just go pick up checks every day. It's not what I do. I do fight for my clients every day. I do stand up for my clients oftentimes. I may have a conflict in a transaction where I'm like, that's not fair. That will not work. And I'll tell you why. And I have to be able to say that to a 27-year lawyer if I need to,
Yeah.
someone that's been developing properties for 30 years and I've had my license for 3 years. I still have to be like, no, but that's not right. And I'll tell you why. And if you do this, this is how we're going to both win. So it is about studying the craft. And maybe a part of it is about like who you are as a person and how you win and negotiate to win in any situation you're in.
Hmm.
Um, I think half of that I had to study. The other half of that is just who I am. It's
Mm.
just like, well, how am I going to win in this situation? And what does that look like? And sometimes I have to think about, well, how do I make sure that Brittany feels like she's winning? Because I think if I can set it up to where she feels like she's winning and we both get what we want out of the situation, we're probably going to get out of here quicker. So that's kind of, I got to
Mhm.
be looking at it from all different angles.
Yeah.
Some people don't even like that kind of like strategizing, but that's what my job requires. I like it.
I love that you said you have to study it. You have to study the craft because it's not necessarily you saying, "Oh, you got to go back to school and read the back to front of the book." It's actually envisioning yourself in the role and aligning that with your passion because the thing is about it is that or not even your passion actually, like your interest. Are you interested in this? Because passion could easily burn out. But are you interested in this? As you mentioned, you go home and you're looking at the sinks, you're looking at granite, you're looking up how much does this cost? And not only that, you are passionate about your clients and you're passionate about other people winning. I want to talk about women's empowerment through real estate. And why do you specifically believe it's important for women to invest in real estate and how they can start even if they're not married or partnered?
So I have a lot of feelings around this. And a part of it is, I met my partner older in life. One, I was like, how old was I? I don't even remember how old I was when I met Jeff. But, I was single for a very, very long time. And I never felt that those things had to happen based on being single or being married. Like I bought my first apartment in New York when I was 28 years old because it was what I could afford. And it wasn't my ideal home. It wasn't my dream home, but it was what I could afford. And I understood the importance of owning and ownership. And even in big cities like New York, where everything is completely unaffordable, I still find it to be worth it because when I bought my first place, it was 2005, I think, maybe 2000,
Wow.
like maybe I think 2007, something like that. But I couldn't afford it. I really couldn't. I couldn't afford it, but I needed to own something and I wanted to own something. And no one around me owned anything. And I was young. I think I knew one guy that owned his apartment.
Wait, can I
And
ask what neighborhood was it?
Clinton Hill.
Wow, you bought your first place in Clinton Hill in
Hmm.
2005?
So yeah, I think '07, maybe 2007, I
You know
think.
what's so
I
interesting
gotta look
about
back.
that? I remember my father was renting in that area. And back then, the Fort Greene we see now in Clinton Hill is not the same area that it was almost 10, 15 years ago,
No,
which I
I
find
mean,
to be so
even what it
interesting.
was when I bought was drastically different than 5 years before. And I remember at that time, people were like, why would you spend all that money for that little place? You can get a house over here. And I'm like, well, I want to live in that neighborhood because and then again, I'm young, but I'm like, I just see that neighborhood doing great things.
And it
Like
absolutely did. You
in
were
an
right on the
appreciation,
money.
yeah, in an appreciation conversation, I was really drawn to Clinton Hill because Pratt was there. And I always feel like where you have education, you will always have a high demand for residential, right?
Mm.
And I'm not in real estate at the time, but I'm not like aloof. I can notice those things. I'm like, okay, you got Pratt, you got St. Joseph's here. So any housing here is going to always have high demand because you have thousands of students in the community. So maybe I buy an apartment and if I hit a bumpy road and I can't afford it anymore, I can always move out and rent it out. I can come sleep on your couch and rent it out, like whatever. But I just didn't think I could lose. And so it really became a goal. I really became focused on it and I accomplished it in probably 5 months. And I was ridiculed for that. Like everyone's like, why would you spend all that money for that little box of apartment? It was 750 square feet. Now that's considered a huge one bedroom in New York. It's considered a huge one bedroom in New York now. But at that time, I was ridiculed. It was like, that's ridiculous. You spent all that money for that nonsense. And that nonsense, what it gave me was the ability to freeze my cost of living because
Mm.
I had my mortgage and I had my maintenance. And not much changed the entire time I owned that apartment. Taxes went up a smidge, maintenance went up a smidge. We're talking maybe a total of $250 a month over the course of 8 years. But I'm in a community where the rent has doubled or tripled in that time, right?
Wow.
So in 8 years span of time of owning, I didn't live in it the whole 8 years. I definitely like rented it out after like 5 years and made a cute profit on it. But within that 8 years, a purchase that was ridiculous and foolish became, how did you get something in Clinton Hill in 8 years span of time? So you can't listen to nobody about nothing you do because people, especially people that have not done what you're trying to do, what can they offer you? They can't offer me nothing. I don't even want your opinion because you have an opinion about me buying a property and you've never bought anything.
Mm.
You don't own anything. And
You
here,
had your vision. You were locked in.
I was just like,
You knew what you were
I'm
doing,
here.
obviously.
Yeah. And probably at that time is when I was learning about what I need to share and not share with people because, I tell you
Right.
this, you want to project your fear on me, and I got enough of my own fears. I don't need to worry about your fears.
Like,
Okay?
I already got enough things that I'm a scaredy cat
I'm
about.
gonna pay this mortgage. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I could just barely like scrape it together with the maintenance, and like after that, I don't have no money left. So I can't worry about your fears. Like, I'm over here eating peanut butter and jelly. Leave me alone. And then 8 years later, it's like, how did you have the foresight? Well, I surely wouldn't have gotten it from any of y'all.
Right,
You just
right.
have to know what you know, what you know. I bought that apartment, and yes, the first 6 months were tight, like really, really tight. you
You
know,
said peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. I
I
think
100% would tell everybody I'm gonna have to eat peanut butter and jelly every night. Thank God I love peanut butter and jelly. And I would say that, and they're like,
same.
"You're gonna be spending all that money?" And I'm like, I know. Like, I thought it was ridiculous, but I knew that it wouldn't be ridiculous for long. And I knew that my apartment would appreciate. Like, I remember 6 months after I bought my apartment, I had $50,000 worth of equity in it. And that
Wow.
is what lit the fire under me because I was like, I've been saving for my 401k for 8 years and I ain't got no $50,000 in it. Wait a minute now, what's going on here? you know? And I was like, wait, and I didn't understand, but I noticed. I was like, something's different here. 6 months, I made 50 grand.
Wow.
Tell me more, and that was the spark right there.
I
Um,
love that.
you can't listen, and that's why I can't listen to anything you have to say because I would have never, when I left Mac. I left Mac and I remember everybody being like, "Are you crazy? Why are you leaving this good job? And you've been here forever and you make your own rules and you've been like, I had like unlimited time off. I'd been there forever. Um, and I hadn't been at Mac forever, but I'd been at Estee Lauder forever. So I had really great benefits. It's the only company I'd ever worked for, like since college. And
Wow.
so even though I was at Mac, I'd only worked for Estee Lauder, which owns Mac. And so I had great benefits, like you name it. And when I was leaving, everyone thought I was having a breakdown. And I was like, I'm having a whole breakthrough, but that's okay.
Right. And I love like people just looking from the outside, they can just think that these are the worst moments in your life, but
It was
really
ridiculous to leave
it's
Mac. It was ridiculous to open Polish Bar in Clinton Hill in a neighborhood like that. Why would they appreciate it? A year later, it was ridiculous to open a location in Prospect Heights. Ridiculous. Why would they appreciate it? And I was like, no, you don't understand. Like, because of Barclays, this strip on Vanderbilt is going to be like a whole restaurant row. It's going to be a
and it
destination.
literally is. It's you have something what's very unique is that you have vision. One of my girlfriends always says this is that sometimes it can be frustrating to create an idea because it's kind of like creating or painting a color that doesn't exist. And you have a gift of vision as to where other people might not see it. They need to see red, they need to see orange, and you're like, listen, I'm just creating
Yeah.
something that's new. And for some people, seeing is believing, which is true. But what's most important is that you held on to that vision. And even just being a young single woman living in New York City, buying and owning property, which is major. Born in New York, raised in
No help.
Arizona,
No help.
came
No help.
came back, came back, did it on her own. And that's just super inspiring because a lot of women, we're taught that we're eventually going to get the house when we get the man, when we get the ring, when we get the baby. And
It's
you
such
literally
an
defied that stereotype by putting your dreams first.
Yeah.
And it was almost as if like this journey towards being a real estate expert. literally you were planting the seeds back
It was,
then,
yeah.
just even with purchasing your first property. But I want to switch gears a little bit. So now for the women out there that are listening that are interested in purchasing a home, I find it really interesting that I've been seeing this trend on social media of women pooling their resources together and purchasing homes with their friends. Almost like Golden Girls. I love Golden Girls. That is still one of my
Yeah.
favorite shows
Yeah,
till
yeah,
this
yeah.
day. What are the benefits and what advice would you give to those considering the approach of moving in with their friends?
So I think it is a genius idea because I feel like a lot of times when you buy, you freeze the price. Like, real estate is always cheaper today than it'll be in the future. Like, that's just kind of what things are. Like, I have watched people, I've been in New York 22, 23 years, and I've watched people wait for real estate in Brooklyn to tank.
It
You know,
hasn't. It's
talking about it, and I'm just kind of like, now you can't even afford to rent where you live. Like, what are you talking about? Like, you've sat
right.
here and you've had the same conversation for 2 decades. And it's not so. It's all in your head. Like, things move on, they evolve, and they progress. And you better do the same. Otherwise, you're going to get left behind. What I do is I do that. That is
Hmm.
what I do. What's next? Let me just see, like, let's like, what else can we do here? And I think it's important to be that way. And I think that any woman that wants to own should own. And I went into it not like, oh, I should wait. And I was just like, well, if you own your shit, I own my shit. Now we got two, or we got four. Like, I'm
Hmm.
not waiting on nobody to do nothing I want to do.
Right.
Anybody that's intimidated by anything, and not that I ever had that issue, like, no one thought it was like I didn't own an apartment. It was fine, totally. But
Hmm.
I knew that if I owned my apartment, I could build equity. I knew that I could buy something today for $5 and eventually it would be worth, $50. I understood that. And I knew that I had the eye for real estate. Like, I knew, like, when I first moved to New York, I was like Fort Greene, Clinton Hill, Bed-Stuy, boom. And I saw those areas developing quickly, still staying very similar culturally, as far as the heartbeat of those areas. And I saw that the homes were gorgeous. And I thought that whatever they were worth now, they're going to be worth more in the future. So I understood that. And I didn't need anybody to explain that to me. So I bought my home thinking I could freeze my cost of living. And even though I couldn't afford today, I'd be able to afford in the future. Like, in the future, this would make sense. And that's exactly what happened. And it became an asset. And the idea of having that asset for me was security, because if I didn't like my life, I could just blow it all up and rebuild it. Because when you
Hmm.
own, you have that freedom. Like, when I decided to absolutely blow up my life and rebuild it, I had two businesses that I owned, and I owned my apartment, and I blew it all up. I sold everything, got rid of everything, and started all over, started a whole new career. Like, I did an article with Renee for In Her Shoes. It was like how I rebuilt my life in a whole year. Because in a year's
I
time, I had
seen that
like,
article.
yeah, like, new car, new man, new house, new like,
We love to see it. Everything
not
brand new.
change.
Everything
It's
brand
change.
new.
What I will not do is fight change. I will not do that because I have decided that I'm a person that's if ever evolving. I made that decision very young. And so because I am that person, what I don't do is fight change. Like,
Hmm.
I will leave anything. I will leave any situation. I will leave any job. I will leave any business. You know?
Period. Period. Now, real estate can be a powerful tool for building wealth, evidently. How can women and marginalized communities leverage it to their advantage?
I think it's really working together. And what I have learned in the last 8 years about the Black and Brown communities is that is how the generations before us did it. And at some point in our generations, my generation, your generations, and beyond, we lost that ability to work together. It's almost like we have to go and do it on our own and come back and like, look what I did. And they didn't have that. Like, the people that I work with that are retiring out of New York that own these phenomenal homes bought with their brothers, bought with their sisters, bought with their dads,
Right.
husband's mom. They bought where whoever could scrape the money together. More times than not, they bought in cash. A lot of times we couldn't get mortgages. When you're talking about the 70s and like late 60s, when people were buying these homes, they couldn't even get mortgages. So it was a little bit of your savings, a little bit of your pension, a little bit of your, wedding money, a little bit of this, and you come together. That's why SROs specifically in the city of New York are so popular, because that's how it happened. Like when my family lived in Brooklyn, my aunt lived in a home and two of my cousins lived in that home and one of my uncles lived in that home and everybody pooled their money together to live in that home. And the home was not a two family, it was a SRO. So there's like 7 rooms in there and 3 kitchens, and that is what people did to make it happen. And we've lost that ability. Like if you know you have your ride or die girlfriend and y'all both working and have good jobs and you're building, why not buy property together? And neither of you have to live in it. Or
Right.
in those environments, like I go to Florida all the time, and I'm like, if I was single, I would so buy one of these lots and build a house with 2 living rooms, 2 kitchens, and we'd just be in here, me and Brittany just in here hanging out. You know?
Right.
Oh, you going to your
Right.
living room? Yeah, I'm going to my living room. Because who's to say you can't do that?
Right.
A
Right.
girlfriend who literally took out the living room in her house and just has bedrooms and bathrooms in her house. And she does it for like a really successful Airbnb business, but it's to say there are no rules. If you want to redevelop a home and put 2 living rooms, 2 kitchens, I tried to sell this idea to my mother-in-law. I was like, hey, why don't you and your best friend move in together? Because, they're retired and they're always trying to like meet up and do things. So I was like, you guys should get together. Let's like renovate one of these houses that you live in to have 2 living rooms and 2 kitchens and like separate wings. That way you can combine your living costs, shrink your overhead, have each other company, safety, all those different things
Right.
outside of the box. I think that works for someone that's retired. I think that that works for someone that's 30 years old. If you can't do it by yourself, maybe you can do it with your bestie. Maybe you can do it with your sister.
Right.
Maybe you can do it with anyone. It's a legal agreement. So long as everyone sits down with a lawyer and puts together in writing what it is and what it isn't, you can do it. And you can put clauses in there that like if one wants to sell, both have to sell. Whatever you want to do, whatever works for you. But what you can't do is let time pass and do nothing. Like that is detrimental. So I
Yes.
think people need to just really think outside the box when it comes to that. I love the idea of women living together, buying together, because, I've seen it with my mom's generation and my grandmother's generation. You are there, you meet your partner, you live a whole life with your partner, and 9 times out of 10, the man leaves you because he either dies before you or you all get separated. And what's great is if you still have a home with your friend, you still have somewhere to go back to, you still have something that's appreciating over the 10 years that you guys were married, or the 20 or 30 years that the 40 years you guys were married, you still have that property. And now that property is worth 4 times what you paid for it. That's going to help to cover all of these different expenses and transitions in your life. My one little apartment financed my entire life change. It allowed me the freedom to quit my business. It allowed me the freedom to move downtown. It allowed me the freedom to get a new car and to take a few months off and to set my head right to start again. Um, like it's the best decision I ever made. As scary of a decision as it was, and as much as I was ridiculed. People in Brooklyn were like, why would you spend that much money for an apartment? I've lived here my whole life. I would never do that. Well, that's your problem.
Owning in Brooklyn is a gift. My family has owned our house since about maybe 1981.
It's
And
amazing.
just the real estate market alone is nuts. Like you were mentioning before, like people were just waiting for real estate to crash in Brooklyn. And it hasn't yet. I remember maybe a few years ago, our house was valued at I think about 785,000. And it's just a two-family home with a basement. Today, in 2024, it's valued at $985,000.
Absolutely.
You just opened up my whole mind to real estate, which actually leads me to my next question, my big question. People often consider this one thing. Should I own or should I rent? How can
Mhm.
someone determine which option is best for their personal and financial situation?
If you can afford to pay $3,000 or $4,000 a month for rent in your apartment today, you should try to own, and you should try to own somewhere that you can afford and that specifically you think will appreciate beautifully over time. If you can afford, I mean, $3,000 is unfortunately very affordable now, but if you're paying close to 4,000, you may want to assess if paying close to 5,000 makes better sense given the tax write-offs, given the fact that you would be freezing your housing costs. So maybe it's 5,000 today, which is a stretch for you, but maybe in 3 years, 5,000 doesn't feel like that much of a stress because you've gotten 3 raises since then, right?
Mhm.
So you do need to assess what makes the best sense, I think, in that situation. I have friends that live in rent stabilized apartments that are massive and they pay $3 a month. And I'm like, you're not going anywhere and I'm never going to let you move. And guess what? I need you to renovate your rented kitchen. I need you to renovate your rented bathroom. I need you to take all of your discretionary income and invest in real estate. But you live here now. Like, there's no perfect situation, You just have to treat it like an asset. So I don't tell everyone that they need to own, because that's not the case. I have a girlfriend that pays, well, I have one of my friends that pays $900 a month for a lovely 2 bedroom in a community where they should be paying $4,000 a month for that apartment. You
Really?
go nowhere. You go nowhere. You stay right here, and and over time we've actually like remodeled the entire place. I think the last thing we're doing now are the kitchen cabinets, and I love little projects like that, so it's fun. But it's not a one size fits all, but you do need to assess. And on the other hand, if you are doing well in your career, making decent money, you've got your apartment, it's cute. Let's say you're in New York and you're paying $4,500 a month in rent. You may want to look to see where you can, again, buy somewhere that's achievable and somewhere that you think that the property will appreciate over time. 9 times out of 10, that's not going to be where you're renting. It's going to be in a different community, but you give that community time. It also will develop, because all areas do, and all areas specifically in Manhattan and New York City do. Like, I mean, I've
Absolutely.
seen it all over Brooklyn. I have not everywhere all over
We've
Brooklyn.
seen it happen in Harlem. We've seen it in
Absolutely.
Harlem.
Queens everywhere. Staten Island everywhere. So I think that, you just need to sit down and assess what makes the best sense, but always think about how it's going to appreciate, because I've seen so many properties in New York and Brooklyn in general, you know, I've seen properties double in value in under, 7 years.
Wow.
I've seen that for myself. So you have to think about it like that. You just can't, year after year, decade after decade, not assess those things.
Right, right. Because eventually over time you realize, wow, I've lived in the city for almost 10 years. I've been spending $4,000 a month on rent. And this kind of even goes back to the conversation about owning with your friends. If you live in a 2 bedroom apartment with your friend, your rent is $8,000 a month. You each are both paying $4,000 a month. It makes so much more sense for you guys to get a house
You
together.
guys need a house. You guys need a
Like
house.
you guys need a house, especially if
Yeah.
there's like, and we have so many 2 family houses, 3 family houses.
Yeah. Yeah,
Like
it's the majority of the properties.
it
Like
makes so
you
much
guys need a
sense.
house with an apartment with a tenant, paying the rent. I've lived in places where I didn't pay anything to live because the tenant paid everything that, all the housing
Mm,
costs. So there are different ways. Now there's everything has a cost, is what I always say. Like, what are you willing to pay? And sometimes you have to pay giving up the area. Maybe you don't get to live in the area of Harlem you want to. Maybe you live in a different area. Maybe you're pioneering in a neighborhood that really doesn't have all the conveniences yet, but over time it does. And when I say over time, a lot of times I'm talking about a year or two. I've moved into communities where I'm like, they have nothing over here. 9 months later, I'm like, oh, everybody's hanging out over here. I can't even park.
do you have like any hotspot areas that are on your radar that you have a vision that are going to be transformed within the next few years in New York City?
I wouldn't give myself the credit of having a vision on these things, because they're real and in effect now, and nobody seems to talk about it. But Flatbush is on fucking fire.
Oh, Flatbush has been on fire. For someone who has never considered owning a home before, but is now interested in owning a home, what steps should they take as a newcomer in this process?
I think the main steps right now, like rates are high, and we are hoping for them to get lower. They've lowered recently, and we're hoping for them to get lower throughout the year and over at the beginning of next year. So this is a really great time to be prepping right now. This is a really great time to make sure that all of your ducks are in a row. And your ducks are your credit score, your ducks are your savings, your down payment, your housing costs. Because let's say you go into a home and you're putting 10 or 20% down of the purchase price. That is not the cost of getting in a home. If you're putting ideally 20% down on a home, because that's a very competitive offer in New York. Not to say that things can't get done with 10% down. However, 20% down works faster. But even at 10% down, you need that plus all the closing costs. The closing costs are more times than not going to be half of that 10% or close to half of that 10%. So it's definitely stacking, definitely making sure you have the most pristine credit, because the higher the score, the lower the rate. It's just that simple.
Got it.
Also, and having money to, depending on the market, I'm very familiar with markets where everything is brand new, but I'm also very familiar with markets where everything needs work. So having the money to do the necessary updates you want before you move in. So it's not, you might be buying a home that's 800,000, but you may need to do $150,000 worth of work to get it to where you want it. It's really a time to be like preparing, because I do feel like around this time next year or a little bit earlier than this time next year, I do think there's going to be a huge spike in buying again, because I think the rates are finally going to be at a nice leveling off rate. The prices are not dropping. That's what people need to understand. But as the rates come down, it's more attainable.
Got
And
it.
acceptance is also a big part of preparatory, like preparing and being ready. You've got to accept what it is. I see that most people don't buy properties because they can't accept reality. They won't accept the homes in this community are 900,000. So they just don't get a house. And then now they're pissed that the houses are 1.2.
Right.
I see that all the time, specifically in our community. I don't know what it is about accepting the fact that something that you are familiar with is valued and seen to be worth more.
Mhm.
Like, let's get over that hump. And I see that a lot. Like, I recently worked with a client that had grown up in Flatbush, was living in Bed-Stuy, had a great apartment, wanted a multifamily home. And I was like, oh, I got to put you in Flatbush. She said, no, 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 I grew up there. I don't really want to be there. And I was like, oh, well, if you want to make money, that's where you really want to be. So I found him something. I found him a 3 family and we made that happen. And I think he's got like maybe 6,000 a month coming in, 3-car private driveway and a garage around the back. So that's also money, right? Because if you can park or store cars, that's money too. So let's say all in all, he can make $6,500 a month on a house that was probably about maybe 1.2 or 1.3 million. You're talking about throwing a little $1,000 on top of those monthly expenses. That's what's costing you to live in this house. And you got your whole house, you got your cars parked outside, and you have your tenants, and it's probably costing you $1,000, $2,000 a month to make those ends meet. You are paying less than you were paying in your condo to be a landlord now. Don't let that be an Airbnb conversation, because then you're not paying anything. It would all be covered, which that's something that they may choose to do down the line. But you've got to really accept it, because if you are looking in, and I find this a lot with people that grew up in Bed-Stuy, they're like, they can't accept the prices. Well, if you can accept them, someone else can, and someone else will.
Right.
And I think that's what happens with a lot of us, and that's where we get priced out sometimes, because I get it, not everybody's in a position to save $50,000 to put down on a house. I understand that. Not everybody's in a position to purchase, and I understand that too. But if there's a way to do it, you should try to do it, because it makes it less likely that you're going to be looking 10 years down the road and having to move out of an apartment that the landlord is selling and you really can't afford to stay in the community that you call home.
Right. It's important to buy back the block. And as
Yeah.
you mentioned before, it is so important to be informed about these decisions. I've lived in New York City my whole life, and I literally remember when you had a certain group of people like literally sticking flyers all over our cars, our doors.
Still,
In the move. We literally
still.
watched it happen to Bushwick, overnight. And that's why it's so important to be informed. And owning is there is a difference between owning and you renting somewhere. And at any time, the landlord's like, hey, and I've seen this happen so many times. Hey,
Over.
my daughter needs a place to stay. So you got to get out. And next
Yeah.
thing you know, you're asked out. But
Yeah. And they're
they,
not wrong for that, right? Because it's like the attitude in this
right.
community, like, that's so messed up. How is it messed
How is that
up?
messed up? My kid needs a place to live and I own
You know
this
what I mean? But
place.
also too, though, Brittany, even if it's not my kid needs a place to live, this is my house. Maybe I just want to make it beautiful and stare at it. Maybe I don't want anybody in there. Maybe I want to take this entire apartment and just have my chihuahuas running around in here. It's mine. I don't owe you an explanation. The lease is up. See you later. And I don't mean to be insensitive with that, but come on, people do what they do to own so that they can have ownership. Don't
Right.
try to dismiss what ownership is.
Because
Nobody can tell me what to do with what I own.
owning
If
gives
I want
you
to park my
ownership.
car on the sidewalk, that's my business. I will suffer from that, but it's my business because it's my car. Same with homes. It's tough for me because in my position, trust me, I deal with the landlord's perspective and the tenant's perspective every day. That duality is exhausting, but you become an owner so you have a say, period. And if you're not an owner, then you don't have a say. I have had to move out of properties that people were selling. We all have, and maybe that's why I was like, I need to own something around here because ain't nobody telling me to go when I don't want to go yet.
Right. Right. Like you're not kicking me out. I'm not leaving.
I'm gonna leave when I want to leave. How about that? I'm not gonna, So something that's important. I see people all the time that they've lived in an apartment for 15 years and are insulted, affronted when they have to move. And it's like, but she bought this. Like Brittany saved her money. She put her money together with her mom and they bought the house. And
Like I didn't buy a house for you to try to tell me what to do.
this is it. You know what I mean? And maybe they wanted to rent for 7 years, but now they want to open a doggy daycare in there. Like that's their business. It is genuinely and literally their business. So that's why I'm super passionate about real estate. I think just because it puts you in control, right? And that's
Yes.
really a theme in my life. Like,
I know that's right. I know
And I
that's
want to
right.
be able to say, like, I want to be able to say, and I don't care if it's 550 square feet. I want my name on it. I want it to be mine. And I get to say what color it is. I get to say when the lights go on, when the lights go off.
You get to say you can't stand outside of my house. You got to go. You can't
Get out of
park
here. I'm gonna
here.
bring that hose out on you. Get
I,
out of
I
here.
I love when I see people. They do this a lot in Canarsie. They will literally have "Do not park here" sign right on the front of their fence, like "Don't you park here."
Yes, and they print it on their little HP printer. That's fine.
That's
Like let those
exactly what
people be, you know?
that's exactly what
I
they're gonna
love
do.
ownership because you are in control. And I think that there are two things going on here is that we need to speak ownership every day so that we're always talking about it. So it's achievable, relatable, and it's a goal. And we also need to understand the importance of that not being the answer for every situation. You know, I've had people sell their property, take that equity, invest in a business, and that business scale and grow and be phenomenal. So it's all about how you move the assets around. I don't think anything works for everyone, but you got to be doing something. You got to be doing something.
It's like you have to just make sure that you're well versed
Yeah.
and that you're taking informed action.
Yeah.
Therefore, it's, because I would hate to, sell my house or take equity, invest in a business and the business tanked. And it's just like, oh, well, my house is also a business,
Yeah.
right? It's also a business. Wow. I learned so much just through this conversation. I am in awe, and you have definitely changed my mind about owning versus renting
Good.
city. I can say that. But lastly, are you working on any new projects that you care to share, and how our listeners and community can support you aside from owning? Well, let's just talk about it one more time. Owning Manhattan. Let's just talk about owning Manhattan one more time
Yeah. Well, owning
because Trisha knows
Manhattan,
her shit.
I
Okay.
Owning Manhattan is, I guess, the latest project, right? Because it's done and it's complete, but we give it to the world on Friday. So that's exciting. Series premiere June 28th. And you can follow along with Owning Manhattan. You can set your reminders on Netflix. It is already coming up as new and popular on Netflix. So you should be seeing the trailer already. If you don't see the trailer, you can go to any of my pages and you can find the trailer. I'm at Love Tricia Lee everywhere, LoveTriciaLee. And I'm also TriciaLee.com everywhere as well. And then other than that, we have like a really exciting building that we just launched. It's a 16 unit building in Clinton Hill. And
Wow.
super excited about that. We have another condo building in Clinton Hill that we're almost 100% sold on. So we'll be having a little celebratory for that. We have a really cool premiere party going on this week that Dumbo House is hosting. So I'm excited about that.
That
Um,
is
and
amazing.
just busy, like just doing all that I can to get the word out about this show in any and everywhere that I can. So I'm excited about it and I'm proud of it.
As you should. Absolutely. We all need to tune in. I know I'm going to be tuning in. I am so excited
I love
to
it.
watch you in all your glory. I know you're going to literally own the show. Okay. I didn't mean to say it like that, but I'm just saying, I already know my sister is going to own the show. So I cannot wait to binge watch Invest. I'm going to be telling everyone. So I hope everyone that is listening, you are tuning in. Owning Manhattan goes live on June 28th on Netflix. We have to tune in. We have
This
to support.
Friday, this
We
Friday.
have to support Trisha. Trisha, thank you so much for your time. I feel like I just learned so much. You literally swayed my entire mind in one conversation,
I
and
love
you
that.
helped reprioritize everything for me. Like I plan on actually moving to Europe in a few years, but I've always said New York is my home and I would never leave. And now you really have expanded my mind into thinking about potentially owning something here because
Yeah, and that
it's
could be a
only going to
huge
go up. It's
part
only
of
going to
your
go up
future.
from here in New York.
Yeah, it could be a huge part of your future plan. It absolutely can be the base of your foundation when you
It's
retire.
literally the foundation, and
Yeah,
it's because
yeah,
the house is the foundation. Hello. So I
absolutely.
I hope not only just I've absorbed this information, and it's definitely just helped me reprioritize a lot of the things that are on my goal list. And I hope for those who are listening as well, you also have digested this conversation and just ultimately understanding the importance of ownership. I hope Trisha's words have sunk into your mind the way it's sunk into my mind. And I'm just like, I need to own. And it's not even about like owning a house because I just want to be, it's like, no, this is a sense of freedom.
you
It
know?
is. And girl,
So
that's all I care about. If I took off my blazer right now, the only tattoo I have right here says freedom in a red tattoo. Because it is all I work
liberation.
for. It is all I work for. Like it is, what is your why? That's my why. I want to do what I want to do.
And I love that. And freedom is just such a strong core pillar to live by because ownership does allow us to buy our freedom,
Absolutely.
literally and figuratively.
Absolutely.
Tricia, thank you so much for
Of
being here
course.
with me. And thank you to everyone that's been tuning in to today's episode with Tricia. Again, make sure we run up the Netflix numbers for Owning Manhattan.
Numbers matter. Numbers matter.
Numbers matter. Until next time, my friends. Bye.
Bye. Thank you, Brittany.
Thanks for tuning in to the Not So CEO Talk Show. If you love what you're hearing, hit that subscribe button and leave us a review. To stay in the loop, stack our newsletter, The Paper, and follow us on social media at NotSoCEO. In case you need assistance with building your brand or you're a creative wanting to go from freelancer to founder, book an office hour session with me on our website at notsoceo.co. Until next time, remember, being self-made shouldn't compromise self-care. This is Not So CEO, signing off.